Luigi's Mansion 2, or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon as it's known in some regions, first released in 2013 for the Nintendo 3DS. It followed its predecessor, Luigi's Mansion, for the GameCube, and has since had a sequel, Luigi's Mansion 3, which is already on the Switch. It's now received the HD Remaster treatment for the Switch, but is it still worth busting these ghosts over a decade later, or should you call someone else? Well, thank you to Nintendo for the review code, and now, let's find out. So story-wise then, Luigi receives a call from Professor Egad informing him that the ghosts of Evershade Valley have turned hostile, and he believes it's something to do with the Dark Moon that has recently shattered, with pieces of it flying in every which direction. He asks Luigi to once again don the Poltergust 5000 and find the pieces of the Dark Moon that have scattered across a number of different mansions within the valley. On to gameplay then, and what this equates to is Luigi exploring a number of different mansions over the course of your playthrough, using the Poltergust 5000 to capture ghosts as you go, and solving a number of environmental puzzles within each mansion in order to move on. Each mansion that you visit is split up into a number of different missions, with you having an objective to fulfill before being taken back to the bunker where Professor Egad is currently situated, where he'll evaluate your progress before sending you back to that mansion to complete the next mission. Of course, you'll see a number of ghosts along the way, and in order to defeat these you'll need to stun them first by pressing A, and then hold down ZR to vacuum them up. You'll need to pull against the direction that they try to move in, filling up the bar that you'll see on screen and then pressing A in order to knock their health points down. When it reaches 0, they will be incapacitated. The mansions themselves are set out in such a way that you'll need to explore and solve a number of different puzzles in order to gain access to particular rooms, and the Poltergust itself has a few different upgrades that you'll find as you play which will help with this. One, for example, will allow you to flash. That's the one that stuns the ghost that I mentioned a minute ago, but it can also unlock doors, and there is also one early on that will re-manifest objects that have been turned invisible. The final mission in each of the mansions will be a boss battle, and any of the money that you find across the mansion will accumulate back at the bunker with Professor Egad, earning you further upgrades to the way your Poltergust 5000 works. I will say that the level design itself in terms of navigating the mansions is of a good standard, and there are a few moments where you'll be scratching your head as to where to go next before finding a hidden room or small access point that you missed first time round. Professor Egad will communicate with you via the DS, or the dual screen as he calls it, that he gives you at the start of the game, and this is also where you'll access your map, and your map is very helpful, I must say, highlighting points of interest for your mission at hand, and meaning that you'll never really get lost. Even if you're not sure how to get to somewhere, at least you'll know you're in the vicinity and there must be some sort of puzzle that you've not quite worked out yet. The downside to this dual screen system though is that Professor Egad is clearly quite a needy person, as he'll phone you constantly with a small piece of information or an update of some description. Now, Nintendo are notorious at times for really trying to teach their players how to suck eggs in games, but more so than ever in this game, it happens so often that you'll be picking shell out of your teeth for weeks. Early game especially, these phone calls are almost incessant, to the point that if I were Luigi I would have dunked the DS in this fountain that you see behind him and cut all ties with the professor, because he just doesn't give up. This, along with the mission based nature of this particular game, does make it feel quite stop start. I do appreciate that the reason this was implemented into this particular entry in the series was because it was for a portable system in the 3DS, so they made the missions more bite-sized, and of course this does still apply to the Switch if handheld is your main method of play. For me though, it does really again just make the game feel very stop-start, especially when coupled with how often you are interrupted to tell you a piece of information which, to be honest, you could have worked out for yourself. There are hidden collectibles for you to find as you go through, such as gems that are scattered about the place, and there's also a multiplayer mode which will unlock shortly into the game. It's a separate affair from the main game and sees you all playing as a different version of Luigi as you make your way across a number of rooms in a mansion. It can be played in both local or online multiplayer, but it does appear that you need more than one copy of the game, which is unfortunate. In terms of the controls, well, this version of Luigi's Mansion 2 takes advantage of the dual stick nature of the Switch's control system, something the 3DS didn't have, and you'll move with the left stick and turn Luigi on a 360-degree axis by using the right stick. You can also use gyro aiming by holding down a button and moving the controller, and this actually worked quite well when you just want to refine your movement slightly. Having said all that, the controls do still take a little getting used to. I find that has been the case in all 3 games in this series, to be fair, but for the whole, they do work pretty well. Gameplay has that charm and humour that the series is well known for, and this second entry is a strong entry in the series, don't get me wrong, although I do feel something is lost by moving away from the more linear nature of the first game, without at the time of its original release being able to go quite as grandiose as the third game then did. It gets 15 out of 20. Controls do benefit from a twin stick system this time round, but will still take a little getting used to. They also get 15 out of 20. In terms of the visuals, of course, this is a HD remaster of that 3DS original, and the improvements from that original game are plain to see. The higher resolution that the Switch is able to produce makes for a much cleaner image, textures look much more crisp, with this in particular really adding a lot of detail and life to the world, and a good use of anti-aliasing does mean that the image seems much smoother than it would have done on its original hardware back in 2013. The resolution is native in both docked and handheld mode, and the frame rate is locked at 30 frames per second. I didn't experience any drops with this at all during my playthrough. It's a clear improvement, and there's definitely been some effort put into this. It doesn't appear to be just a case of upscaling certain models, and light and shadow is another area where the game has made improvements, although I would argue that some of the weaker elements of this remaster do come down to just this. This Switch version does seem much brighter, which in some cases is a positive most certainly, especially when juxtaposed against the shadows, creating some nice atmospheric moments, but some of the elements do look a tad too bright for me, certainly on the character models, Luigi obviously being the main of these, to the point where he almost looks rubbery. The lighting, whilst much more refined than the original, doesn't look as refined as say the third game in the series, leading to Luigi looking a bit more cartoonish. Now obviously because of the design of the character anyway, it's not a huge deal, but it is certainly noticeable with the green of his clothes and the brown of his hair just not looking quite as nuanced as they would have done in a game built from the ground up. I also found that the moment where you cleared a room of ghosts, something that leads to the lights coming back on, to again feel oversaturated, and perhaps just turning the saturation down a tad would have done this game wonders. Moving on to the audio, and it does have that comedically creepy feel to it. It has a very classic 1930s, 1940s cartoon feel in terms of the way that the music is portrayed. You can almost imagine Luigi creeping around, with the trombone accentuating his footsteps as a ghost creeps behind him, completely unbeknownst to our protagonist. There is some nice progression in the music too, as new instruments are added as you make your way further into these mansions. And I must say I absolutely loved the way that Luigi would start to hum along to the theme song at times during the adventure. Just giving a massive amount of charm to the game, with further examples of this being things such as the elevator music, being that kind of kitsch, chintzy music you would expect, but almost like a horror themed version of it. Visuals have definitely been updated from the original. It looks very clean and smooth, and the textures have definitely received a reworking. Perhaps a little oversaturated for my liking at times, but on the whole they receive 17 out of 20. Audio, as I seem to say in many of my Nintendo first party reviews, is quite possibly the strongest aspect of the game, perhaps not quite as grand and expansive as in other games of theirs, but still well up there to be fair, with a huge amount of personality, and it gets 19 out of 20. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD Remaster costs £49.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. This is going to be the major sticking point as far as I'm concerned in terms of not just what this game scores, but whether people will pick it up or not. Of course 2013 is over a decade ago now, on a console that you can't easily buy these days, certainly not from shops. So a new generation of people will want to experience this game for the first time, and to them it will seem like a new game. Add to that obviously the improvements made visually, and for some it will be a no-brainer. If you have played it before though, in terms of new content there isn't really any at all, it is just that visual upgrade, which does make it a much harder sell. And as much as I want to treat this as its own release, it is difficult not to mention the third game, which is of course Switch specific, and for me at least is a superior game to this one. I just like the more free-flowing nature of the missions, as opposed to the more stop-start nature of how this game handles its missions, and £50 is starting to feel like quite a lot of money. In all honesty, I think Nintendo's best course of action with this game would have been to have bundled it with the first game, or failing that, release this for about £15 cheaper, something more in line with the Metroid Prime Remaster, which, to be fair, was more of a remake than this game, and sells for a much lower price. As it stands though, value gets 11 out of 20. To conclude, Luigi's Mansion 2 was a good game when it released some 11 years ago, and remains a good game to this day. The visual improvements of this HD remaster are definitely noticeable, and the gameplay holds up irrespective of this anyway. There's a good 15 hours worth of content here if you haven't played it before, and you'll enjoy making your way through the different mansions and finding all the collectibles if you are a completionist. It's just that price that's the major sticking point for me. I really do feel that Nintendo need to bring in almost a B tier pricing range for their IPs that are not as popular, or for remasters of older games, something they've done a fair bit this generation. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD Remaster gets a SwitchUp score of 77%. Thank you everybody for watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this game up, you can get your eShop cards over at our website switchup.gg. Doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back in cashback. Certainly helps with games that are on the more expensive side such as this one. And there are other links down there to places such as PlayAsia with some discount codes. Anything that you use down there does help the channel and is very much appreciated. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.